Welcome to the LSU NCBRT Preparedness Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Markle. I am a curriculum development specialist here at NCBRT, and I work in collaboration with subject matter experts to create valuable and timely training for the responder community. The National Center for Biomedical Research and Training provides mobile training to both the national and international emergency response community. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're beginning a new series on leadership with some of our favorite instructors and past guests. And today, we're joined by Mark Dupont, a frequent guest on the podcast. So thank you for joining us again today, Mark.
Thanks for having me again.
So to start us off today, can you tell us a little bit about how you define effective leadership and how your personal experiences or observations have shaped your understanding of it?
Again, you ask these loaded questions, actually, and you set me up, and I'm okay. How do I piecemeal this? But let's just start. I think you made a comment. Define effective leadership. So let's start there.
Okay.
I think you can Google effective leadership and you're going to find a few thousand answers, right? Mm-hmm. But I think really when you boil it down to what it is, effective leadership is a reflection on one's ability to successfully influence and support, I want to add that part, influence and support a team, a group, an agency, fill in whatever you want. So the key words there are ability, which I think is a learned skill. It's not something that you're just born with, and some people may have it. We've heard stories about it, and a person just naturally steps up and takes a leadership position. But even if they do that, they're going to learn along the way what works, what doesn't work. How do I accomplish what I want to accomplish? So ability is the first part of that definition. And the second, ability to successfully influence. I'm pretty sure we all probably have an experience in our lives of someone that wasn't successful in influencing us. Either their people skills just weren't there. They aggravated us, if anything. They maybe exacerbated some problems that were there. So they didn't necessarily successfully influence us. And then the last part of that definition is support. If you as a leader haven't built into your mantra, built into your modus operandi, a way to support your team, then you will fail. Yeah. You might be leading by position, meaning you've got the title, you've been awarded the crown, but you don't understand what that means in your ability to support people. So I personally, many years ago, I was thinking about a gift that I was going to give a good friend of mine that was taking over command of a Coast Guard station. It was his first command. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't think of anything to get him. I've known him a long time. I'm not going to get him a compass or, something to put on his desk. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to write him a letter. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to write him a letter about what I thought leadership meant and this new journey that he was on. And one of the things I ended up coming up with 20 rules. It didn't start that way, by the way. The letter to him was a short one, but as I started that letter, I kept it and I kept adding to it and refining it, what those rules would be for me if I said, how do I be a good leader? But one of the things I said to him is, jokingly, I said, leave a mark. Obviously, my name being Mark, I said, leave a mark and make an impact. And the word impact stood for influence and move people with purpose, achieve with confidence, commitment, compassion, and truth. So if you're going to be a leader, you need to make an impact. And each one of those letters stood for a word. The first one being influence. If you're going to be a leader, you've got to influence people, and hopefully in a positive way. It won't always be positive, but you need to influence them. You need to influence how they make decisions. You need to influence how they do their job. You need to influence what they strive for. You need to influence how they go home at night. Are they going home angry at the world, and kicking their dog when they get there, or are they saying, you know what, this is a good day. It was challenging, but it's a good day and I can't wait to get back tomorrow. So you need to influence and move people, not move thoughts, not move ideas, not move the bottom line, move people. Get them to want to get up and do what you want them to do, and move those people with purpose. In other words, don't just move them for the sake of moving. What is it that we want to accomplish? What's the purpose that you're giving them? What are you instilling in them that they're saying, you know what, I want to do that? By the way, someone can say, I don't agree, but I'm going to do it because this leader has influenced me, has influenced how I think. I'm going to try this. I'm going to go down this pathway. I'm going to follow them because I value how they're leading. The second half of that word impact is achieve with confidence, commitment, compassion, and truth. You have to act with confidence. As a leader, if you're acting always in doubt of what your decisions are, or in doubt of what your future holds, or in doubt whether or not you're going to keep your job or lose your job, that's just going to affect how you work. So you have to achieve what you want to achieve with confidence, but you also have to have commitment for the same reasons. If you're worried about how this may turn out, if you're worried about the backlash, if you're worried about what people will think, then you probably aren't going to be able to be committed to what you're saying you want to achieve. So you got to have confidence, you got to have commitment, you have to have compassion. And that's where the support part that I alluded to earlier. Compassion for the people that you're working with, compassion for the people that you're serving, whether they be serving up, meaning leadership above you, serving below you, people that work for you, or serving all around you, people that are your colleagues. How are you compassionate? It goes back to a story or a comment I had made in a previous podcast. Do you know their story? You can't be compassionate with them if you don't know their story. If you don't know the people that are out there working on the floor for you, if you don't know their names, if you don't know if they're married, if you don't know how many kids they have, how can you truly be compassionate for what their challenges may be? And then last but not least is truth. It sounds fairly obvious. It sounds fairly simplistic, but sometimes it's not. Just operate with truth. Don't worry about, wait a minute, if I say this the way it's supposed to be heard, or if I do this the way it's supposed to be done, people might not like it. Always operate with truth. I'd rather fall back to that than be thinking about something that maybe I was untruthful about and trying to support that story. Let's just make sure we influence and move people with purpose, that we achieve with confidence, commitment, compassion, and truth. And very briefly, actually, I'll give you a very quick snapshot. So 9/11 happens. I'm of course, my role is in Boston to secure that port. We had to escort a liquid natural gas tanker in after 9/11, and this got White House Situation Room attention. We had to create a security plan. A lot of things were happening. But when it happened, the people that I was tasking with protecting this thing, I went out on the water with them that night. We did it at 2:00 in the morning because we wanted it when no other boats were around. We had to do it at a certain state of the tide. But anyway, I went out with them. And I had a leader question me, pull me aside and ask why I was out there. And I said, I'm out here because I'm asking them to be out there. If I'm going to do something, if I'm asking that at that moment in time, we still didn't know the depth of what we were in as it relates to our adversaries. We didn't know how risky this particular mission was going to be. So if I'm asking you to do that, I'm going to be standing right there with you. I'm not going to ask you to do something that I wouldn't do. But we ended up in a debate with this particular person. And I said, let me ask you a question. I said, can you tell me the name of one person that's out here on the water, on one of these boats, risking their lives to protect this high value asset? Wait a minute, that's a challenging question. Can you tell me where they're getting their food tonight? Wait a minute, that may be too challenging. Can you tell me where they sleep? And the answer is no, I can. That's my job as a chief warrant officer, to understand all those things and to be the bridge, if you will, between leadership and the people that are out there doing that job. But that is the essence of what I'm talking about with regard to confidence, commitment, compassion. Understand what I'm asking them to do, be capable of doing it myself if asked to do it, and be able to support them in what I'm asking them to do. Support their roles, support their families that are connected to this, their lives that are connected beyond just the scope of that 41-foot boat.
I love that. How you defined leadership with both influence and support and compassion. I think that
Yeah, and
a lot of us don't think about the support part, but like, you know, it's so human.
and it's becoming increasingly a need. We're working on
Mhm.
developing a course within NCBRT for mental health and well-being of our people. And it's unfortunate that we have to develop a course to train leaders that this is important. It's unfortunate that we have to do it, but we're doing it.
Mhm.
And the most important thing to understand is just as much as I want my officer to be fit for the job, meaning he's physically fit, he can do the push-ups, he's staying in shape, I have to make sure his mind and his heart is fit for the job too.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, we lose sight of that. And back to the story, those types of stories have been what's shaped my perspective. I've watched people lead or not, right? I've watched them not really understand it and saying, you know what, when I get in a position like that, I want to make sure I'm paying attention to those things. I became a leader at 8 or 9 years old,
Mhm.
and it wasn't by design, but it was because I was in an abusive childhood. I was being literally abused, and I had to take ownership. I had to take control of what I was going to do and how I was going to react to that. So I had to lead myself, and I actually had to lead my siblings. I had to step up and do something. Now, not all the decisions I made were the perfect ones, but I started to do something, and I made difficult decisions. And that what it taught me then at a very young age is leadership involves difficult decisions. There's tough things that you're going to have to do. It might not be popular. It might not be liked, but is it the right thing to do? Is it, again, back to that confidence, commitment, compassion, and truth? Is it plugged into those things? And if so, do it. Um, I had to do things that people told me I couldn't do. I had to pay for my own high school by shining shoes at night because I wanted to go to that high school, because I wanted to get a degree, because I wanted to be successful. I knew that this was a stepping stone. This was a waypoint. I've used that word before, right, Ashley?
Mhm.
It was a waypoint that I had to strive for. But to get to that high school, I actually had to hitchhike. So at 14 years old, with a suit coat and tie, I'm hitchhiking to get to that high school because it was an all-boy Jesuit high school, and I knew it was the best in the region that I could get to and reach, and that's the one I wanted to go to. So I made those types of decisions. I had to lead when I was 18 years old in the Coast Guard. I'm in boot camp, and the recruit company commander quits, can't take the pressure, leaves. So one of the petty officers walks up to me and says, "Okay, you're now the assistant recruit company commander." So now I'm in a position at 18 years old where everybody in that company is a lot older than me, and I have to lead them through 8 weeks of boot camp. Again, I had to make decisions. I had to do things that might not have been popular, but I had to do that. And then leading all the way up to 9/11, I was put in a position that I felt at that moment in time I was well prepared for. I had done so many of these things that I'm talking about that helped shape who I am and how I made decisions. I was ready for it, and I wanted it. I wanted to do what I could to make a difference. So I ended up shaping policies, procedures, tactics, things that never existed before. I was able to do that based on the experience that I had and the preparation I had for being put in a leadership position.
Thank you. It's great. So, can you share a specific example of a leadership crisis or pivotal moment you've encountered in your career and how you navigated that and what lessons you learned from that?
Sure. So again, there's a lot of waypoints I can look back at as far
Mhm.
as leadership moments, both good and bad. But again, I'll kind of focus on that 9/11 one
Mhm.
because I saw people in positions of leadership freeze,
Mm.
not knowing what to do. And again, these were not bad people; these were
Yeah.
just good people, but just didn't know where to turn, what to do, or how to move forward because they had never thought of or considered the what ifs. They had never thought of, what will we do if something like this happens? It's just never been kind of on the radar screen. I think of the book by Amanda Ripley, Unthinkable. We use that as a
Mm.
reference point in some of the courses that we teach. But that she explains that type of thing in that book, where if your brain hasn't really been prepared for it or thought about it, you can be in a position where you're not able to make a decision. You're in a period of denial or debate before you can make a decision.
Mhm.
But in the same breath, I saw leaders take the organization into the unknown future. Um, there are people that stuck out because they couldn't make decisions, but there was other people that stuck out because they made these monumental decisions. The one that really strikes me is Admiral Allen. He, at the moment, he wasn't the Commandant of the Coast Guard. He went on to become the Commandant of the Coast Guard. But he started a project that he would take 100 of what he considered the brightest minds in the Coast Guard. It didn't matter of rank, it didn't matter what their job was, didn't matter where they were from. He would bring them all together and he would do what he called Project Evergreen. And what he would ask, he would break them into groups of 20 and he would ask them, think about the world 25 years from now. What would it look like and what would we need to do? And it'd give some parameters. To one group, it'd say, the world is, there's no wars, democracy is the rule, it's all nice. To another, it'd say there's war raging in the Pacific because of this, this, and this, maybe because of oil, and he'd give some other. Anyway, you would look at those worlds and you would look forward. And his leadership was really outside the box in how he got the organization to think. But I asked him one of those days when I was next to him, I said, Admiral, how do you get the people in middle management to buy into what you're doing? And he put his arm around me and he says, Mark, he said, we're turning the Titanic. And when you turn the Titanic, you're going to rub against some ice. You're going to hit that iceberg a little bit and you're going to scrape some ice off of it. And it's going to take a long time to turn it. It's a big ship. You're not going to turn it in a boat length. It's going to take us about 5 years to turn this ship. And I thought about it and I said, well, that's pretty insightful. I said, why do you think it's 5 years? He smiled and he said, in 5 years, those people that don't understand it will be gone.
Mm.
They will have moved on, the people that are challenging it. So my point is I've seen people not make decisions or make bad ones. I've seen people make good ones, and all of them have made a mark one way or another in influencing how I do my leadership.
Absolutely. So to wrap us up today, given how much things are changing, dynamics in workplaces, things in society, how do you think the role of leadership is changing, and what implications does this have for leadership practices and strategies?
Great questions, full of a lot of content in the question. Let me say this: I don't think leadership is changing as much as people think.
Mhm.
I think we tend to always look at the workforce dynamic changes. We have a tendency to think that we've got to change how we lead this new workforce, this new generation. And again, if you look back in time, almost every generation will look back at the one behind it going, wait a minute, they don't get it, they don't do it the way I do it. We've got to change how we're doing things. And we keep kind of looking at the problem with the same set of glasses. Again, you said earlier about perspective. I think it's not so much changing as it is fine-tuning. I think that there's elements that are important that will never go away. Let me back up and make this point. According to Mark, there are 4 P's of public safety, if you will. I put this in a white paper back in 2017, but the 4 P's of public safety are people, process, platform, and performance. So no matter what your organization is, no matter what it does, and this extends well beyond public safety, but my paper was focused on law enforcement. But if you look at public safety, those are the ingredients that we need to run the organization. And how we do each one of those things determines how successful we'll be. People is the first one and the most important one. It's going to occupy most of the time. How we bring our people in, how we train our people, how we keep them current, how we nurture them, how we feed them. Very important part of the equation. Process is defining the how. Process is how do we go about doing that? How do we go about training them? How do we go about nurturing them? How do we go about taking care of their mental health and well-being? The platform is just basically the tools that they have, the police car that they drive, the boat they drive, the gear that they wear, all the tools that they have to do their job. So how do we do that? How do we get it? How do we train them in it? How do we maintain it? How do we go about doing that? And last but not least is performance. Unfortunately, we tend to leap all the way to the last thing and look at performance. Hey, how are we doing? What are the problems that we have? And we tend to address those, and we end up putting a Band-Aid on the performance element without realizing that each one of those other 3 Ps have a dynamic impact on our success. So let's go all the way back to the people part. This may sound familiar, Ashley, but if we strive to make a mark, if we strive to make an impact, if we strive to influence and move people with purpose and achieve with confidence, commitment, compassion, and truth, we'll be okay. So it's not so much as what do we have to change about leadership? Let's just go back to the basics. And the basics are taking care of and supporting our people. Let's make sure we do that well. And if we do that well, it's amazing that everything else kind of falls into place. How we go about our processes, what type of tools and platforms we get for our officers, how we perform, all just kind of naturally flows into place. But let's take care of our people first, and let's focus on the support of our people. And from that, we'll become an effective leader.
Well, that's just a perfect place to stop. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining us. This was amazing. You always hit us with the truth right there at the end, and throughout, of course. But thank you so much.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
If you have any questions or topic suggestions for future episodes, please send us an email at podcast@ncbrt.lsu.edu. Make sure you subscribe to the LSU NCBRT Preparedness Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts.